Hello, welcome, design mate. Please come inside. Owning this place was the strong need to find a location where we could combine living and working. So my father is a trained and well-experienced architect, so he was a little bit afraid of saying, well, if I build a house and an office for us, then I have so many ideas in my mind of all the 700 projects I realized, so maybe it's better to find an existing house. Easier said than done. It took us 3 years evaluating many different alternatives until we finally decided that Harkottene would be the place. It was the summer house of the noble family because it's about 35 kilometers outside of the city center, and during the summer they spent their time here, and in the winters they had a second house in the city, like noble families had at that time. So on one side it's a castle, on one side it's a factory, our design factory. We are active more than 50 years by now. My father founded the business as an architectural studio and continued by designing sailing yachts, motorboats, and since the early 80s we work as an industrial design studio. As you can see here already, one of our major areas still is and always was the bathroom industry. I think we can really claim for us that we are one of the first studios that was and still is working on a large scale and setting major trends, luckily with our partners Dornbracht, Alape as well as Duravit, and managed to really reach out to a global market with the designs. Today we have about 40 employees working with Michael and me. Michael is in charge of the design side. I'm more on the business and marketing side. And my father, who obviously founded the business, retired in 2003. So it absolutely has a very unique vibe, that for sure. When you start to look at the floors, the door handles, and say, well, it's 250 years old and still works, because there's so many things that we put back into the original state, and not with a high amount of repair. It was more cleaning up fireplace because there had been so much cover on top of it. And if you then see that good quality really lasts for generations and decades, I mean, trying to find a product these days where somebody gives you a 10-year guarantee is already a challenge. And if you say, give me 250 years guarantee on the flooring, be respectful for history and look back when you create something new. And I think this is something that Harkоттен does every day to us. No, but I always like to show this room because it automatically makes you realize the age of this place. Just because we have smartphones today, I always say we are not that much smarter than our grandparents, because they sometimes had a much better understanding of dimensions, the height of a ceiling, ergonomics. So when you walk down the staircase and touch the wooden staircase, the handles, it's very ergonomic. It is, I think, a challenge for some of them because it's quite a way. It's about 45-minute drive from the different places where they live to get here. But I think that's quite similar when you live in London or when you live in Tokyo. Commuting these days is part of the job. And I think they all enjoy having a space which has a certain quietness, which has a contact to nature. As you see, it's my office, which used to be my living room, because as I said, Michael was living on this side, I was living on this side. Yeah, as I said earlier, I'm traveling a lot. I'm trying to bring back some souvenirs, so some of the things I bought myself, but from the wooden sculpture from Indonesia or to the nice flag from St. Petersburg, which I picked up through some of our events together. So that's always nice to have some memories to bring home. Well, my favorite room in the house, I think I must say, is this one, because it's seen so many different uses. From classical conference room, used to be the living room of my parents and the family. I mean, there's been big Christmas trees standing here. I just had a big birthday party a year and a half ago and changed this more or less into an airport waiting lounge because, well, my topic is global traveling. So I said, okay, there is a waiting area for Scandinavian Airline, for American Airlines, for Aeroflot, and for China Airline, and all the tables were decorated in different foods to share a little bit of my global experience with my friends who maybe don't have jobs that bring them around the globe so much. The garden was more or less obviously part of the house, the castle, but it was never really used. So always the noble family, being Catholics, looked more or less in the direction of Münster. So they had some sculptures on that side, but never really had a sculptural park here. So we said, okay, now we have the chance to change it, but not go out and find old sculptures and bring them here, but asking artists and designers and architects of the present and say, okay, you come up with your idea for a sculpture park of today. And this is how Ettore Sottsass came here and said, well, I'm not an artist, I'm an architect, so I'm building a house. And Fabriцио Plessi, who is a multimedia designer, did it. We realized his first ever outdoor sculpture. The fountain was then, after not getting along with artists, a design that Michael and my father did themselves, which is a nice vase they created in the early 90s. And then there is a sitting man by Roger Selden, who normally does very bright, very colorful paintings. And then we said, Roger, can you do a sculpture for us? And, oh, sculpture, yeah, interesting, nice. And then we opened the big wooden box, and suddenly this gray, boring guy comes out. And we at first, Roger, why do you send this to us? And then now we are very happy that he sits there under the trees and creates a very relaxed mood.